Well, the wonderful Fringe is going gangbusters. If you're in the city over the weekend, particularly on Saturday night, you'd know exactly what I mean. But wait, there's another 3 weeks to go. But it doesn't end there. Next up, in fact, this weekend is the Adelaide Festival, followed by WOMADelaide and then the Cabaret Festival. So we're proudly the festival state, after all, and we can see why. With me now is Rachel Healy, Joint Artistic Director of the Adelaide Festival. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, how are you?
Good to see you. I'm well. And Annette, now how do you say your last name?
Tripodi.
So,
Tripodi.
Tripodi. Okay, sorry about that. From WOMADelaide. Let's begin with you, Rachel. Adelaide Festival.
Yep.
It's next week.
I know.
It's this weekend.
I know, it's incredible. Officially we start on Friday night, but we have a sort of a soft opening on Wednesday with the extraordinary Grace Jones coming to Adelaide, first time in decades.
Yeah, that's going to be great. Is that sold out?
Nearly sold out.
Nearly
There's still
sold out.
tickets for people to buy if they, like me, leave everything to the last minute. But you really wouldn't want to miss out on her. She's incredible.
That's a really interesting point that we can jump into straight away. We have a reputation in this town of leaving our ticket purchases until the last minute, don't we?
Very much so, particularly with live music. And I know it drives music promoters around the country absolutely spare that Adelaide does have that kind of reputation. And last year, I think it was sort of good because a couple of our shows, particularly our centrepiece opera event sold out in November. And so everybody, I think, those who go to opera kind of learnt a lesson that you can't always leave it to the last second. And so it's something that obviously we would prefer that people...
Yeah, absolutely.
Book early.
Yeah. And in fact, I mean, we digress, but I think it's part of the theory as to why some acts actually bypass Adelaide, isn't it?
I've heard that too.
Yeah, they can't get enough money in the kitty to actually guarantee that they're going to be in the black at the end of the day, or in the black sufficiently.
That's right. That's right.
If we're talking those big names. The Adelaide Festival, you know, it's where our reputation of as the festival state began, didn't it? 58 years ago.
Yes.
Crikey, who would have thought, eh?
I know, and if you look back at the alumni, I mean, Marlene Dietrich performed here, some of the most famous people in the world. And when you go overseas, it's really something that people talk about. The Adelaide Festival, I sometimes wonder if people realise here in Adelaide how significant it is to Adelaide's reputation globally.
I've got no doubt people don't realise that. They don't appreciate that.
Yeah, it's really something that you start to notice when you're in the arts and you travel internationally so much that people want to tell you their experience of the Adelaide Festival and seeing, the incredible performers or the writers that have come out here. There's an incredible heritage.
Of course, Festival 1, 1960. Give us a call if you've got a memory of the 1960 festival. That would be lovely. There used to be a flower exhibition or something, didn't there, on North Terrace?
Yes, that's right.
I'm showing my age now.
No, that's true. There were incredible things in the early days. Public art, all kinds of extraordinary parties, talking to people who were around a lot in the 60s tell some wonderful stories about the kind of festival it was. And like all festivals, it's evolved over time. It's germinated other festivals. I mean, Adelaide Festival gave birth to the Fringe, to WOMAD, to Writers' Week, and they've many of them have obviously developed their own identities and organisational.
If you've got any thoughts, any memories or thoughts of the early festivals, give us a call. We'd love to hear your memories on it. Of course, nearly 60 years on, the 2017 festival last year was one of the most successful. Box office record, nearly, 4 million?
That's right, just over 4 million.
That is sensational, isn't it, for one festival?
Yeah, we were really pleased. The dollars are great, but really it was a sign that the community had really embraced the festival and our programming. And the particularly exciting part of it was just the sheer number of people who came from interstate and overseas. And that was always the Adelaide Festival's reputation. It was once every 2 years and everyone came from across the country. It really set the benchmark for what was happening in the international performing arts world here in Adelaide. And some people wondered if that was still the case once it decided to go annual. So it was really heartening to see everybody return. You're putting your hand up.
I'm putting my hand up. I've got to say, I wasn't in favour of us going to an annual event. I thought it would be just too much.
Yeah, look,
proven wrong. Shows how much I know.
Well, look, a lot of people felt the same way as you, but I guess it was really. I felt that it was it's a programming-led question, and there are many wonderful festivals all around the world, like the Edinburgh Festival, that are annual. So it can be done if you have the right program, and so it was really wonderful to see what happened in 2017.
Now, look, you're co-artistic director, so you've got a reasonable set of responsibilities there.
Yep.
How difficult is it to actually put together a festival that appeals to a wide enough group that you can attract all parts of the audience? Because if you just narrow it down to talk about the high-enders,
Yep.
you're not going to crack the $4 million ticket sale, are you?
No, that's right.
How difficult is that as an artistic director?
It's actually not as difficult as it might sound on paper. I mean, the idea that there are really clear borders between high art and contemporary culture is just not the case anymore. People dip in and out of all kinds of things. And, the program is very diverse, but we don't sort of sit down and say, we've got too much elitism and we need to have something that's going to attract the masses. I don't think people participate in entertainment in such sort of segmented ways anymore. And certainly last year, I mean, one of the huge sellers was The Secret River.
Yeah.
A straight theatre play about first contact, a story of Indigenous relationship to the land and the white Australian settlers, set in the quarry, a long way away.
Yeah.
Lots of reasons. It was
a big ask to get people to go and sit out there.
It was cold, sit outside, and it went absolutely nuts. We'd sold, over 13,000 tickets. And so with the right show, you will connect with people. And so, we haven't found that aspect of programming challenging. The much harder thing is finding work that we think is really good enough for Adelaide audiences. Because everyone has Adelaide rightly expects a very great deal of its festival. It's meant to be, and it should be, the greatest artists of our generation producing their finest work for our city. And keeping that standard high is something that's an ongoing challenge.
Do you get people knocking on your door?
Oh, constantly.
You do?
Yeah. We're overwhelmed with it. So the process of selecting is very personal. Neil and I try and see everything. We don't really even like to program from videos. We like to see things live with an audience, and then we make a judgment about which works we think are going to meet the standard that I talked about and really connect with a local audience.
And how do you keep in tune with that local audience? Because that would change every year, I'd imagine. Or is there a real core? Is Adelaide that place that there is a core audience that you can rely on?
There is definitely a core audience.
There is,
but you can't.
See, I thought that might have changed over the years.
No, I think that there is. I think there's a core, but you can't take them for granted because it's not as if they're going to sign up come what may. They look at the program really carefully every year, and it's also. I made the decision to move back here with my family because I didn't want to assume that the audience, that people I knew in the community I was part of when I lived here, when I grew up here, was going to be the same 20 years later. And so we make sure that we see as much as we can at the other side, in the other parts of the year, that we attend local companies, we're out and about as much as possible, we go to the footy, we really try and get a sense of how our community is living and feeling and experiencing the world now rather than in some kind of nostalgic haze.
That's really interesting because in my 30 years here in Adelaide, I think I saw it go through that originally it was for the people, a festival for the people, of the people, for the people. Then I think it went through that bit of a phase where it was a bit high shelf.
Right.
And you've turned it around and brought it back to a festival for absolutely everyone now. I think
great.
That's the perception I have out there.
That's terrific.
Yeah. How are we tracking for this year's event then? Kicks off on, as you say, on Friday.
Yes, no, things are going well. We're about 14% ahead of the same time last year.
14%, and you already set a record last year of 4 million.
Yes.
Well,
but,
no pressure.
Don't count your chickens.
That's good though, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's terrific. And so, we're just hoping that everything will, and praying that the weather will be good to us and that everyone's planes and freight will arrive on time and all of those kind of back-of-house logistical things that give you 3 a.m. cold sweats.
I was going to say, you must have a lot of sleepless nights heading into these sorts of events, I reckon. Goodness me. What are some of the highlights this year for you?
Oh, look, it's so hard to sort of choose your favourite children, but we talked about Grace Jones. She is going to be absolutely stunning. And on Saturday and Sunday, we have the Lost and Found Orchestra. I saw them a number of years ago. They are so exciting. When you see their concert, you just feel like punching the air.
Because they started here, didn't they?
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, Stomp was a huge success in the Fringe many, many years ago, and they've evolved and created this incredible orchestra in which they play instruments from found objects, from vacuum cleaners and piping and witches' hats cats and everything you can imagine. But the music is absolutely wonderful, and it's a spectacular. And so there's as much to look at as there is to hear. And they've joined with 500 South Australians, and it just promises to be the most joyous, uplifting, and wonderful family.
We've given away lots of tickets for that, and it proved very, very popular. The phones would go absolutely ballistic. So I think it's going to be a good lineup. Now that's at Elder Park over 2 nights, so it's out in the open as well. A beautiful, beautiful balmy night. It's going to be gorgeous.
Yes, that's right. And so far the weather's looking really wonderful.
Yeah, excellent. Fingers crossed. Now you've got a couple of other things. Hamlet, for example, for the real purists.
That's right. For the opera lovers, Hamlet is it's an Australian success story. I mean, Neil Armfield, who's my co-director, Australian composer Brett Dean, the creative team, Ralph Myers, as designer, for example, have come together and created a new Australian opera that premiered in the UK last year and really had the opera world talking. While it's too early to make any announcements, it's going to have a very significant life after its Adelaide season. It's just fantastic to see the home team so valorised internationally, and it's really great and important, I think, that Australians can have an opportunity to see the work of their fellow Australians that is making such a big impact globally. We did it with Saul last year with Barry Kosky, whose major work had not been seen in Adelaide, in Australia for many, many years, and to bring one of his major operas here to give the country a chance to see what he had been achieving was something that people loved and was a reason that they travelled to Adelaide. And it's, again, a reason that people are travelling to see Hamlet. So that's going to be incredible. We've also got an amazing show, Kings of War, that's in the Festival Theatre the following weekend that, in terms of theatre, is one of those shows that you just wouldn't want to miss.
Sell that to us.
Kings of War is it's a kind of mashup of 4 or 5 Shakespeares, but it's in contemporary language, and it's really a study of power and how in a time of Trump and Brexit and all of the things that are filling the 24/7 news cycle, the company has, through the prism of these Shakespeare plays, shown us how power is exerted, how authority occurs both formally and in the back rooms, and the production itself includes large video screens where you can literally see what is happening behind the scenes. Okay. The director really understands how technology influences and changes the use of power. If you think about one of the kind of binge-watching TV series like House of Cards, it's that kind of show. You get in there and you get to know the characters, and it's just absolutely compelling. So anyone who's into those sorts of stories and particularly stories about politics, it's really, I'd say, one of the shows not to miss.
That sounds absolutely stunning. Yes, absolutely. I'll be queuing up for that one. Stay with us. We're talking about the Adelaide Festival, and also after the break we'll have an equally impressive chat about the wonderful success of what we know as WOMADelaide. Welcome back, 10 minutes away from 2 o'clock, and we've been talking about the wonderful Adelaide Festival, the festival that helped make Adelaide or South Australia the festival state. Of course, there are 2 other big festivals that began under the Adelaide Festival banner, and they've grown to become major events in their own right. Adelaide Writers' Week, and of course WOMADelaide. And Annette, you're here to talk about WOMADelaide. You've got a very, very strong personal connection, haven't you? Because you've worked on WOMADelaide for a while.
I have. It's pretty hard to believe, but it's been over 20 years at the festival office here in different roles, but it's quite incredible. I don't feel that old, for one thing, and I certainly still love it with the same passion that I did.
You began as a volunteer, didn't you?
I did. I was what we call an artist minder, looking after a few groups who were here from overseas, and then I got a minor role on the next festival, and it has gone from there. But I did come from the festival world. I'd worked on Adelaide Fringe and what is now Dream Big, and was then the Come Out Festival.
Yep.
And the festival has taken me around the world now, so I feel very, very connected to it.
What's the secret? What is it about WOMADelaide? I'll make a confession. When it first began, I was one of those who thought, I don't know how many years life this has got. I'm really showing how, not what a bad judge I am today, aren't I? But It's just gone from strength to strength to strength.
It has, and as you mentioned, it was born out of the Adelaide Festival, and it was intended as a festival within the festival in '92. I think the first one attracted something like 30,000 people, and then it went out on its own in between the biannual Adelaide Festival. What has made it thrive is that it's still a very unique festival in the setting, not just in South Australia but across Australia. So it's a major, over a number of days, international music, arts and dance festival of an extremely high quality. In terms of the production values of the festival, they are very much lessons learned from the Adelaide Festival in the early days of you don't just whack a band on a stage and hope people will come. A lot more love and passion and effort goes into how the venue looks, that people feel safe, that they have a good time, they're entertained, that their children are welcome. And on so many levels, we are still unique in that way. But the main thing is that it remains a festival that's introducing contemporary and traditional music to a really big audience, and those musicians and artists have, in most cases, not ever been to Australia before or never been to Adelaide before. And we have a few repeat artists, but it's generally a fresh program every time.
Now, I asked Rachel this question. What criteria do you use in selecting the artists?
I work with Ian Scobie, our director, and it is a year-round thing, so we're already involved in 2019 and beyond programming. I think you have to really love the group and know that it will work for the festival. And of course you can love a lot of groups. There's a lot of incredible artists out there in the world. And then there are the logistical criteria that have to apply insofar as can we actually get them here in March and can we afford them and all of that. But if we look at absolute quality as the number one criteria, we want also to be able to have seen the bands perform live where possible. And if not, we have the luxury of having other WOMADs around the world where we can actually confer with our fellow artistic staff and say, we like the sound of this band on paper and on video and on album. Have you seen them live?
Yeah.
And it can go either way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Sometimes we're quite disappointed to hear that perhaps they don't meet that excellence in so far as a live experience is concerned. But obviously if we're going to the effort and making the investment to bring them to Australia, which is significant, we believe in them strongly as brilliant live performers who have something to offer our audience that no one does.
Got the track record there. WOMAD, how many WOMADs are there around the world, do you know?
Currently, there's our sister WOMAD in New Zealand, which happens the weekend later, and we deliver all of their international artists to them. The Mother Festival, if you like, in the UK, which is at the end of July each year, and that's been going for 10 years longer than WOMADelaide. There's one in Spain, in in Cáceres, a very small town. There's an occasional one in Taormina in Italy. WOMAD Chile, which is quite new, only had its 4th edition recently. And I believe one in the Canary Islands. But over the years, there have been probably 200 WOMADs in different countries, and some of them intended as a one-off, some of them to celebrate an Olympic Games or something like that.
And ours started in '92 and it's still going strong. And of course, WOMADelaide, it stands for the world of music.
Arts and dance.
Arts and dance, yes.
It could have easily been called WOMAD Australia, like so many of the other festivals, but it was just a perfect mix of names, and the WOMADelaide merged, and it is unique.
It's fantastic. How many acts this year? You've got 98 performances, I believe, over the 3.5 days.
We do. It's quite incredible to think that over 3.5 days there can be that many shows. We have just under 700 artists involved.
Is it that many?
Yeah.
Wow.
That includes some of the Adelaide performers as well, of course, but that's Australian and international artists performing across the board in the street theatre and the KidZone and obviously in the bands and the dance companies on stages. And it is a record, a particularly big and beautiful edition coming up.
And ticket sales tracking well?
They are. We're very, very happy that each day when we get our reports, we're tracking quite a long way ahead of this time last year. And as Rachel and you were talking about earlier with this kind of assumption that something's not going to sell out and people may leave it till the last minute, we do sell at the gate if there are tickets available, but I really feel that that is a little less likely in this upcoming edition at the end of next week. So if you want to go, we encourage everyone to buy early. Because that way they're not going to be disappointed.
Yeah. Well, the fence has gone up. I drive past there every day. The fence is up and it's underway.
The bumping has started today.
Yeah,
so our crew are there and starting to build now.
Fantastic. Really looking forward to it. And of course, it must be really difficult too, getting some cut through, given that Rachel, your festival begins on Friday.
Yep.
And then yours begins the weekend after, WOMADelaide. And all the attention seems to be on that bloody fringe, doesn't it? I'm being nice to your colleagues. But it must be difficult to get that cut through sometimes.
Look, it hasn't really proved to be too challenging. I mean, certainly locally, there is always competition for newspaper space and space in the public domain. But if you step outside South Australia, I mean, Adelaide Festival has a massive presence in Sydney and New South Wales.
And as does WOMAD.
And so our audience is certainly made up of the Adelaide community, but a very big chunk are coming from interstate. And so it's not as if we are really, we're only, chasing the same people. There's certainly room for everybody.
And we have around 50% of our audience coming from outside SA.
Is it that many?
And it is literally from Tasmania to Darwin and everywhere now.
Yeah,
so
just shows how
it is a draw card
what the brand's
for the
worth.
city.
Yeah, absolutely. And just on the value, festival last year, $66 million. That's an awful lot of dollars in this town.
That's right. It's lots of heads and beds, as the tourism bods say, and that's it's really important, I think, for people to understand that, because that means more jobs for South Australians. It means people coming not just to see a show at the festival, but staying in hotels, going up to the Barossa, eating at our absolutely incredible restaurants. I mean, the chefs working in South Australia at the moment, I think, are the best in the country. And if you talk to other chefs around Australia privately, they will say Adelaide is absolutely where it's at. So it's really, the Adelaide Festival is the anchor event that gets them here. But once they're here, they're doing a whole lot of things that is really, I think, building the SA brand and really showing off, what Adelaide has to offer and what South Australia has to offer. And that's really, it makes us really proud to be
absolutely.
part of that.
The wine regions, down McLaren Vale, Barossa, etc., etc.
Yeah, Port Wollonga, incredible.
All over the place. Yeah. Well, listen, fantastic. Really looking forward to it. The festival kicks off on Friday. Now, for tickets, the web address?
You can jump onto our website, which is simply adelaidefestival.com.au.
WOMADelaide.com.au.
And WOMADelaide? WOMADelaide.com.
Yep, and head
Can't
to
get
the
them wrong.
page.
And go to the tickets page. And the word is book now. Right, don't leave it until the last minute because you might be disappointed.
That's right.
Fantastic. Great. Thank you so much for telling us all about it. It's really exciting times. And as I say, it's why we're called the Festival State. We should be very proud of it. Good on you.